Alors, mesdames et messieurs, je vais vous demander de prendre un siège et je vous invite à vous asseoir.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will ask you to please sit down. Please come closer.
I invite you to have a seat. Take a seat, please. So this session will be translated. You choose the channel, and should you need some headset, please ask the hostess to give some to you. C'est un honneur de vous accueillir à ce panel qui est consacré aujourd'hui.
It's an honor to welcome you at this panel, which is to a vital issue: connectivity, connected African markets, and their role in unlocking intra-African stock trading potential. While intra-African commerce is progressing, it still represents only 15% of all trade, far behind 67% in Europe. And this shows the immense challenge, but also the immense opportunity that we are facing. So it started in December 2019 and was a significant advance by connecting 2,000 companies with capitalization of $1 billion via 7 African ports. So this is targeted to make trans-border exchange easier, better transparency, and better integration of financial markets in our continent. So I wish to return on the opening ceremony 2 years ago in Abidjan. I was invited by Mr. Felix, who invited me for the opening. This was a very moving ceremony, but I think we have a small technical issue, so maybe we'll be able to go back there at the end. So this moment represents the first stone of a bridge between African economies, between our investors and our collective ambitions. However, potential of AELP cannot be fully exploited without meeting certain major challenges. The first being regulatory fragmentation in exchange between countries, and then complexities of regulation that make transactions slower. Discussions will be on 3 key questions. How can AELP strengthen worldwide competitivity? What regulatory reforms are required to optimize their impact, and how to guarantee that African champions will fully benefit from this integration. This panel will bring together diverse perspectives to explore this question and identify the required measures to make AELP a lever for transformation. It's time to delve right in. And to start, I am very happy to welcome our expert, Mrs. Kaouthar MEHREZ. Bonjour.
And I'm managing partner at Galite, an investment banking advisory firm based in Paris, focused on funding solutions, investment strategies, and M&A. We serve clients across Africa, Middle East, and Europe. I have been working on capital markets for years now on both equity and debt sides, and I can tell you I have experienced some mismatch sometimes between the offer and the demand. On one hand, African issuers have huge funding needs, and most of it in local currencies. whereas investors usually tend to go to hard currencies. And even African investors tend to tap international market for their stable currencies. And here we cannot blame investors. What they need is really easy coming in and easy exit. They flee risks and illiquidity. If we look at the African exchange landscape, here, we can see that first, what we can see is the ridiculously small size of this stock exchange market that for the most populated continent, the total market cap only represents 1.3% of the global market cap. We can also see 29 siloed and disparate stock exchanges with low cross-border activity at high costs and currency risks, as well as strict FX policies in many countries. But every cloud has a silver lining. Africa Stock Exchange offers unique opportunities for multi-sector investments in the world's fastest growing economy. As you can see on the chart on the top right side, the leading stock exchange in Africa is Johannesburg, with 1.1 trillion market cap, far above Casablanca with 75 billion market cap, and followed by Botswana and Egypt. But if we pay attention, we can see that countries with the fastest growing economies, such as Kenya, Uganda, and WAMU zone, have smaller stock exchanges, which gives room for capital market growth across the continent. On this lowly but promising backdrop, the African Stock Exchange Association and AFDB launched the African Exchange Linkage Project with the aim to abolish boundaries and reduce fragmentation in order to grow the African stock exchange size and increase the traded volumes. So AELP basically can boost the liquidity of the exchanged securities as it offers the possibility to interconnect 15 stock exchanges. As we speak, 10 are already connected to the platform, covering 17 countries, with market cap around 1.5 trillion, representing more than 90% of Africa market cap. This backbone provides access to a wide range of services such as equities, bonds, derivatives, ETFs, real estate investments, trade, trust funds, and other funds, and allows investors to reach more than 1,050 leading African corporates in various sectors such as information technology, financial sectors, industry, energy, agri-food, and so on. So basically, AELP uses a link platform that is based on an order management and trade confirmation system. And if we can give an example to illustrate, you can follow me on the chart on the top left side. If an investor in a country A wants to buy a stock of an institution listed in a country B, actually the investor does not need to have a direct relationship with a broker in country B. He only needs to contact his broker in country A, also called the originating broker. And through the link platform, this originating or sponsored broker will access the domestic stock exchange in the country B, thanks to the executing or the sponsoring broker in country B. So this facilitates real-time trading and information transparency and sharing between stockholders. And what we can say is this AELP, this backbone, would help promoting African securities and to achieve interesting expected outcomes, notably reducing transaction risks, time and costs, diversifying the offer for investors and providing them with easier exit tools, and attracting more African investors for cross-border capital raising, which would reduce reliance on the foreign capital exchange, as well as capacity building and know-how sharing between different stock exchange counterparts, such as central banks and regulators and depositories. And ultimately, meeting African funding gap estimated to something around 100 billion annually. So in a road trip, usually you know the starting point and you know the destination. But when you go on a road trip, the trip itself becomes part of the story. And the story here is full of challenges. The first challenge is regulatory fragmentation across Africa. And as you can see here, we try to think about some solution that could help overcome this, especially supporting the data sharing and transparency between different actors in order to have updated information for all the market players, also encouraging experience sharing and increasing collaboration across Africa. The second challenge is the cross-border payment inefficiencies, where sometimes transaction cannot happen without intermediary banks, even outside the continent, which leads to very high-cost transactions. And it has been said this morning by Mrs. Alawi, the average transaction cost in Africa is 8% versus 6% in the rest of the world. And to overcome this, hopefully the Pan-African payment and settlement system would allow local settlement, bypassing all the intermediaries and then reducing the cost for different players. And the third challenge is related to FX limitation. And let me tell you, this is really a hard challenge because it comes from countries that want to protect their currency. And the issue is how can we accommodate the currency conversion while protecting it? How can we accommodate both, actually? And this could be done by introducing measures, innovative measures, maybe fiscal incentives, and encourage intra-African trade. The fourth challenge is the limited liquidity on the African stock exchange. For this, to enhance the liquidity, it's very simple. We need to first increase the size of the capital market, and second, increase the volume of the exchanged securities. And to do so, we need to attract both investors and issuers to the stock exchange. We need to have incitative measures and continue to do so until the African mentality opens up to the stock exchange and consider it adopted actually as a go-to place both for investors and for issuers. And notably for SMEs, and you know that SMEs are the core tissue of the African economy. They represent 90% of the registered businesses. They generate 90% of GDP growth and 50% job creation across the continent. But they face urgent funding gap, estimated to 140 billion, and various obstacles preventing them from accessing the capital market, such as the lack of information and some bureaucratic burdens with complex and slow processes, and usually they have neither the time nor the resources for that. One way that may help SMEs access capital market funds would be to create a dedicated market segment for them with simplified procedures and accelerated tracks, allowing them to benefit from bespoke funding solution. One good example for that is Euronext Access Stream that allows startups to access stock exchange. And this is what we would need in Africa, maybe. So I won't give all the solutions. I will let my fellow colleagues debate about them later. But just to conclude, let me tell you that discovery does not consist in seeing new landscapes, but in having new eyes. And hopefully now we can see how AELP, being a windfall for SMEs, can strengthen African capital market, increase both its size and its liquidity, support African economy, and ultimately fulfill population needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. MEHREZ, for this brilliant presentation, which set the scene. It's now time to welcome on the stage my speakers, and I will do it quickly. Everybody's up. I will start with Mr. Felix AMENOUNVE, CEO from BRVM. Welcome on stage. You can sit on the second seat here. Then I will call Mrs. Lina TONUI, please, project manager from AELP. Welcome on stage. And then I will welcome Mr. Gokhan KONT from IFC, specialist on the FI. Then I will call Mr. Dr. Jeune from the Securities Exchange from Nigeria. And finally, I will call Mr. OGBALU from CEO of PAPSS on stage. Welcome, my dear speakers. So please, I will do this presentation both in French and in English. So you just have to, do you need a headset? Please raise your hands. We need a headset, please. Hostess, where are you? We need a headset. President Orama, just sitting here. So my first question will be to you, Mr. Dr. Felix AMENOUNVE. We'll speak in French, so please put your headset on. L'interconnexion des bourses africaines via...
Interconnections of African capitals promises strengthening global competitivity of African markets, but this requires ambitious strategies to attract investors, develop new products and liquidities. As leader of the regional stock market, how does the ECOWAS region, how can the ECOWAS region make profit of this? Thank you, dear participants, to this session. I wish to say that AELP for us is first of all a strategic project for African Stock Exchange, because in our association, presided by our President Celestine, we decided to follow all other African integration projects because we believe capital market integration is essential to accompany the transformation of our continent. Starting there, we needed to structure a project that works in phases, 3 phases we talked about. And for us, it's in the third phase that we will fully see the functioning of AELP. For those centers, you know that it's been 25 years now that we have a common scholarship. So we have a certain experience of regional scholarships where we are already used of working in several countries and to go to various countries. So this is a mini model, but not the end in the sense that we already went through the three. So what are the benefits we can take from this? It was already mentioned, we are a zone of strong growth for 25 years. We have in average 5.8% growth rate, which is a remarkable performance, with countries like Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal and Niger that have much higher rates. So the fundamentals of our economies are solid enough to attract investors. Second, we have an exchange regulation that allows repatriation, easy repatriation of interests and dividends. So how do you prove that you invested? With a training. So this is important to mention. This is an advantage. So we have a currency that's pegged to euro, so the risk is less. There is less arbitration, less coverage of international institutions. So all those are tools that we believe can be attractive from AELP and that can allow us to mobilize resources for our companies and states to finance growth. Thank you very much, Doctor, for those views and on the opportunities of the ECOWAS region, thanks to this stable economic environment and advanced regional integration.
Attractiveness in mobilizing investment across the continent. This perspective raises a key question. Beyond the regional level, how can African stock exchanges position themselves as major players in global financial markets? So you, as a project manager within the AELP, could you share with us the strategic measures being implemented to achieve this ambitious goal?
All right, thank you. So just following up on what Dr. AMENOUNVE has mentioned, the association, the African Securities Exchanges Association, came up with the idea to start the African Exchanges Linkage Project. And the purpose of that is to enable cross-border trading across the different participating markets in the continent. So, there has been a lot of talk about how small a lot of the African markets are. But so to push that, what we, through the integration, there are many opportunities to create a one-stop shop for African listed securities. So the AELP aims to do that. It aims to facilitate cross-border trading amongst the participating exchanges and also to increase visibility of the African listed securities and stock markets in Africa. And so, a lot for us to be credible outside of Africa, there needs to be information easily available about African capital markets. And so the AELP works towards integrating or aggregating information about African markets, integrating information about the listed securities in the African continent. And the other thing also that, as has been mentioned, we are also going into a phased implementation of the project. So through harmonization of investment infrastructure, we are also going into the harmonization of regulations across Africa. So our regulations obviously have to be, globally recognized so that more investors can come into Africa. And so there has been a lot of work that we are doing, first to increase visibility, to make sure that our regulations are world-class, or that, they are comparable to regulations across the globe. And information is key. That's how people get to invest, if they know what they're investing in. So we continue to increase, a lot of the work that we will go into is to also just increase a lot of information about the African stock markets.
Thank you, Mrs. Lina TONUI, for shedding light on the strategic measures that the AELP is implementing to position African stock exchanges as global players. From cross-border trading to capacity building and regulatory harmonizations, these efforts are clearly laying the groundwork for a more interconnected and competitive African financial ecosystem. Let's now talk about building on this regional perspective, and let's turn our attention to Nigeria, one of Africa's most dynamic economies. Dr. Emomotimi, excuse me, because I always hate when somebody is now worse pronouncing my Ramatoulaye first name. So, excuse me. Dr. Emomotimi John AGAMA, Director General, Securities and Exchange Commission of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. In your opinion, how does Nigeria plan to leverage the AELP framework to attract global capital while simultaneously strengthening intra-African trade?
Well, thank you very much for that question, Ramatoulaye. It's important to understand that the only way we can grow as Africans, and indeed an African market, is when there's a linkage. The major challenge that we've always had over time is the inaccessibility of Africans by Africans. And this also speaks clearly to the exchanges. Even though digital, they are totally not connected over time. But Nigeria as a country was one of the very first countries that embraced the AELP program. And we're proud to have done that. We're proud to have done that, and we did that principally because we understand the value that that will definitely bring. And of course, holding on to the old adage that says, divided we fall, united we stand, means so much, even for Africa, much more than any other place. It is very challenging to find that to move across Africa is far longer than to move through from Africa to Europe. And that, exists in every aspect of our lives. So the AELP program provides that opportunity for that linkage to happen. One of the things that the Nigerian SEC intends to champion as we move on in our administration is to create an Africa regulatory hub, wherein all African regulators within the capital market are sitting on the same table and analyzing and assessing the regulations that exist amongst all of the countries to find a common ground that enables each and every one of us see each other and provide what we call reciprocity in our regulations. Because if that does exist, it means that whatever obtains in your jurisdiction obtains in my jurisdiction. And if that is also the case, it means that with the press of a button, whatever issuance that is approved in a particular region will also be approved in another region. All we need is to have a global standard, more or less an African global standard that sits well with the international global standards. That's the essence of the IOSCO, the International Organization of Securities Commission. And the reason why that organization does exist is that as countries within the regulation of the capital market or the securities market, we have, regulations that cuts across these regions and is able to apply to whichever country. Because the truth is money no matter what you call it. The importance of money is about exchange. It's the ability to use that money to be able to exchange something in wherever you go to. So clearly, if we are speaking to raising capital in any part of the world or any part of Africa, that should be easy with the press of a button if you have regulations that cuts across each of these jurisdictions and meets international best standards. And of course, will create opportunities for more companies to raise capital irrespective of the jurisdiction that you find yourself. Like you're aware, money will go to where money is needed. Money does not go to where it is not needed. And so attracting money means you must play by the rules. You must provide all of the regulations that is required for that money to be attracted to the region where you intend it to come to.
Dr. AGAMA, I love your enthusiasm. You say money should go to, I have forgot. Can you help me? Can you repeat it again?
I said money will go to where money is needed. So if you create that opportunity, it will come.
Exactly.
So, and that's the essence of this program.
I think this is the quotation that we should remember for this panel session, right? Thank you, Dr. AGAMA, for your valuable insight on how Nigeria plans to leverage the AELP framework to attract global capital. This brings us to a key challenge faced by financial markets across the continent: regulatory fragmentation. We know that to unlock the full potential of African capital markets, successful harmonization, as you said it, of regulatory framework is essential to ensure a stable and secure environment for investors. Mr. Gokhan, as the Regional Industry Director at IFC, from your perspective, what policy reforms do IFC consider priorities to encourage investment in African stock exchanges?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to mention that as IFC, we advise and we provide technical assistance to 30 central banks and financial regulatory bodies in Africa for capacity building, and mostly in debt and equity capital markets. And you know, I see our role is very much aligned with what AELP is trying to do by way of linking various stock exchanges and harmonizing the infrastructure, which ultimately leads to attracting more appetite and more investors, domestic and international. Basically, I mean, maybe I will step back and talk about you know, what an investor would want to see to come in and invest in African capital markets and stock exchanges. First of all, I think one needs to create an ecosystem where you have several elements in this. I mean, you need, obviously, you need issuers of securities or equity in the form of IPOs or SPOs. You need investors, retail and institutional, domestic and foreign. You need advisors, like arrangers, underwriters, and legal advisors. And in the quadrant, on the fourth corner, the most important thing is you need the regulatory understanding. So if we can create this ecosystem, again, this solves one part of the problem. The other part is addressed by programs like AELP by way of establishing a platform to logistically make things, trading easier. So, of course, in terms of attracting either more IPOs or security issuances in the markets, unification of tax regimes, avoiding double taxation, you know, having a harmonized anti-money laundering and AML, KFC, CFT policies, and also making the money transfer, you know, more efficient and cheaper and reliable. I mean, I will not talk about macroeconomic stability because, you know, in every jurisdiction we see, different cycles based on, geopolitical influences and global factors. But again, the idea is to prepare the framework so that make it more attractive for investors and incentivize the issuers. I'll stop here for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gokhan, for shedding a light on what kind of policy reforms needed to encourage investment in African Stock Exchange. Turning our attention to another crucial aspect of market operation, the settlement of securities and cash. While technological solutions such as blockchain and cross-border payment system hold great promise, significant challenges remain. Mr. Mike OGBALU, CEO of PAPSS, could you share how the PAPSS system can address these cross-border settlement challenges by reducing delays and cost while ensuring transaction security?
Thank you very much. So you talked about 3 key things. You talked about reducing cost, making it quicker, and making sure that it's secure. And I'll tell you how PAPSS has solved all those 3 challenges. The biggest challenge that we have is that we have stock markets that have been largely shallow, and they will remain shallow if we do not increase the volume and values of trade. And the only way to do that is we need to be able to bring more people into that ecosystem, trading and investing. And to do that, we need to make payments very seamless. So what we have done is we have built a world-class payment system, and a payment system that can stand up anywhere in the world, okay? It's African, but it is world-class. Now, this system that we have built, we are guaranteeing that people can make payments for trades, and they can do so in their local currencies. So you can originate a transaction, you can pay for a stock in another country using your own local currency, and the payment can be received in the local currency of the destination country. So PAPSS has solved the issue of having all of the disparate currencies across Africa. PAPSS also has gone ahead to make it instant, so the payments are able to complete in no more than 120 seconds, okay? PAPSS has also made sure that those payments can happen at a fraction of the cost of any other competing or any other payment system that you have on the continent. So this speaks to the issue of cost. Now, you talked about security. Now, it's a payment system that, so we first of all built this world-class payment system. We have some very solid governance organs, which include the central banks who govern the system from within the governing council. Now, this system has been built in line with the principles for financial market infrastructure, and it continues to be reviewed by external third parties. We've also gone ahead to put in place world-class GRC systems. So from the AML to the sanction screening to the fraud management, and all these systems are investments that we've made, and therefore other sectors and other industries do not have to make those same investments because we have covered it within PAPSS. So we've put systems in place to ensure that transactions are done in the best available security, and we'll continue to invest in enhancing our security. So to that extent, we think, first of all, I believe the AELP is one of the most ambitious projects also on the continent because it helps to unlock all of the sterilized capital across the continent and brings us closer to actually having a single continent trading together. So while AELP is bringing together and facilitating discovery, yeah, PAPSS is also dealing with making the cross-border payments. So in 2023, we signed an agreement with AELP, and we're in the process of bringing both the AELP and PAPSS together. By so doing, you begin to find smaller businesses coming to the capital market because it becomes easy and will make it more pervasive. For me, the secret weapon for AELP is ubiquity, making sure that anybody in the channel of their most convenience is able to actually buy and make payments for stocks across the entire continent. So this is how we're delivering costs, speed, and security. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. OGBALU, for illustrating how PAPSS is transforming the cross-border settlement by addressing delays, reducing costs, and ensuring transaction security. Do you think you will be positioned in the barometer next year in the first position?
Well, again, you and I need to discuss your barometer, but then we are very happy with the progress that we're making. We are now at a stage where even a shoemaker sitting in a remote place in Aba is able to sell his shoes to someone in Nairobi and not worry about how he receives his payment. And the fact that he receives it instantly gives him more time to turn around his inventory, and everybody gains.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Fully understand. Your explanation highlights the significant stride being made to enhance the efficiency and affordability of intra-African transaction. And yet with this example, aligning perfectly with the broader goals of the AFCFTA. Shifting focus to another critical challenge within the AELP is ensuring the effective settlements of securities and liquidity. This is not only pivotal for operational efficiency, but also for building investor confidence. We talked about it earlier across borders. So Mrs. Lina TONUI, from your perspective, do you believe that solutions such as involving central banks, for instance, and central depositories across the continent could address these issues effectively?
Oh, absolutely. We've just talked about creating an entire ecosystem that will enable cross-border trading. And, Mike has very clearly, elaborated how, bringing in payment partners then would facilitate that process. So there is a lot of challenges in transacting across Africa. Some of the countries don't even allow, people like their investors to invest outside the continent. So if we bring in together everybody, obviously just either creating or strengthening networks for the central depositories, that would be very key. The way we started was, first of all, to harmonize the trading infrastructure. But, over time, we do realize that we cannot just, concentrate fully on just trading infrastructure. We need to bring everybody that is a key player in the investment ecosystem to come and join us. So strengthening those networks would definitely improve our processes. And then engaging central banks, Mike and PAPSS are already doing a lot of that, but we still do depend on central banks a lot for the settlements and a lot of payments that happen first within the different jurisdictions, but now bringing them into, as an association and talking to them about the cross-border trading that we want, that we are enhancing, would also improve the efficiency and access to cash. And then also just exploring, new technologies such as blockchain. So if we start to explore blockchain solutions where, we will facilitate an end-to-end transaction visibility, audit trails. So bringing everybody into that one ecosystem where, they can monitor all the transactions from end to end, and that everybody in the ecosystem can participate in that, then will definitely improve the efficiency of AELP. And, PAPSS then plays a very key role, when we have started the process of trading, integrating 7 stock exchanges, bringing, a total of now 11. We have also just onboarded Eswatini Stock Exchange. and all their respective stockbrokers. We have about a network of over 40 stockbrokers. For us to bring all that together, we need to definitely work with the central depositories. We talk about KYC policies and processes. For us to also be able to facilitate an easy KYC process across the continent, we definitely need central depositories. So yeah, we need to bring everybody on board. That's just how it's gonna work, right?
Thank you so much, Mrs. Lina TONUI. And as we delve deeper into this topic, it's clear that international institutions like IFC play a pivotal role in supporting financial infrastructure development. Can we discuss, Mr. Gokhan, about the role that the DFI can play in building those capital markets?
Yeah, I mean, apart from providing technical assistance and policy advice, our main role is by way of investing, showing a vote of confidence and signaling effects in the market. So what we do is multilateral banks like IFC, quite often we take corporates and financial institutions to capital markets, right? Either for issuance of fixed income securities or for issuance of shares in the form of IPOs or secondary offerings. So what we do is we work with arrangers and advisors to design a framework in a thematic way that will attract other investors, so that we can multiply, the amount that IFC is investing in, and we have a long list of investors that tag along to our procedures and our due diligences, like impact investors from other regions globally, so that basically if we invest $1, we can bring $4 more. So that, and then when the information memorandum or prospectus for the issuance is prepared, quite often we are named in the prospectus, so that again, it provides additional level of comfort, and by reaching out to again, it would facilitate the job of the issuer and the advisors in terms of reaching out to a wider audience, because today for every issuance you need a few institutional investors as anchor investors, like IFC, like pension funds, insurance companies. I mean, insurance companies, they do not only underwrite policies these days, they are massive asset management companies sitting on large pile of cash and liquidity, just like pension funds. So again, if we can create this triangulation between the regulatory bodies, issuers and investors, our role is to play, our job is to play a catalytic role to make these issuances happen.
Thank you, Mr. KONT, for highlighting how IFC initiatives and partnerships build investor confidence within the AELP framework. Cela nous amène, please put your headset on your ears, because I'm...
This leads us naturally to another key aspect of financial growth in Africa, supporting champions, our national champions, and of course our small and medium companies around our continent. Many countries encourage the growth of national champions to strengthen competitivity at a continental and worldwide level. Mr. AMENOUNVE, according to you, how can we contribute to a better financing of African champions and strengthen their competitivity by attracting worldwide investors? Thank you, Ramatoulaye. As I said earlier, for us, AELP is first a highly strategic project that should allow stock exchange and capital markets to play their role of bettering finance, bettering the long-term finance of our economies. This is important to remember. The secondary markets, with all its attributions of liquidity and depth and harmonization, all this is just to favor our market. This is important to remember. Today we are concentrating our effort on bettering the secondary markets, creating liquidity conditions. This is all very well. Only just not to say that the first African stock exchange is London and the first mining stock exchange is Toronto. We wish to offer on our continent access for investors to many different markets. We also wish to send a message to our African emitters that we shouldn't choose London or Paris or Toronto or New York just because there are no liquidities in Africa. Those are problems we wish to solve. Once we solve them, and we see that the secondary market is a calling product for the first market, how can we have more IPOs in Africa? So that the African financial market can leverage resources to finance the development of our country, finance the private sector, because there are many African companies that are not addressing the African market. This is something that AELP wishes to change with the capacity of leveraging resources at a continental level. And in the other panel, mutual recognition of the visa of the regulators, as was said. This allows MTN, Dangote, Safaricom to leverage important funds at a continental level. Sonatel, the last edition of Sonatel was around 50-60 million euro. Well, we can go further, 200 or 300 million to finance investment. So it's important to have a platform that allows investors to not only trust the African markets, and especially the private sector to leverage resources. There are countries where pension funds have more money than in others. We should allow the Botswanese, Ghanaian, Nigerian funds to buy titles in the ECOWAS. The same should be valid for the private sector and for states. Our states, to reach a certain level, need to enter the international market with all the level of debt. If we have this capacity at an African level, it's possible for the Ivorian state to leverage $1 million on the whole continent. This is what we want. So if we wish to create national champions and competitivity compared to other continents, and states that are adequately financing themselves to develop infrastructure, for this we need to reach phase 3. This phase where we have the possibility of having continental level interviews. I believe this is what's needed. And will give us the importance in the barometer. Yes, you are perfectly right to mention this.
And for your valuable insight into how the AELP can be a game changer and really for financing African champions and enhancing their global competitiveness, as you mentioned it. This naturally leads us to the question of how individual countries like Nigeria can leverage these initiatives to address local challenges. Dr. AGAMA, Nigeria is one of Africa's most dynamic economies. Yet its SMEs face significant barriers to accessing financial markets. How does the SEC Nigeria plan to use initiatives like the AELP to encourage more local listing and improve access to capital for businesses?
Yes, thank you, Ramatoulaye, for your question. But just to let you know that yet Nigeria's SMEs face challenges. It's a global phenomenon. If you remember, the Jobs Act, right, that was created in the US was particularly created because the essence was to address the issues of small and medium-scale enterprises who had challenges with accessing finance. That notwithstanding, for us as Nigerians, we pride ourselves to be the African giant by reason of our population, our companies, our industries, and all that we have. And clearly, it is on national statistics that over 95% of our companies are actually small and medium-scale enterprises, which is also something that runs across most other continents. So it is not new about us. What do we need to do to change the narratives of this small and medium-scale enterprises who are actually the engine of growth to be able to raise capital from the capital market? Because finance actually is what makes the world go round. And so for companies, it is also what makes the companies actually develop or become what they should ordinarily become. We have seen also that Nigerian companies, especially the fintechs, are able to raise capital from all over the world because of the value that they create. But then the question again is, for the exchanges, for the AELP program, how does this help to do what we need to do? We have been deliberate and intentional in Nigeria, and that is what is needed, which we have always lacked. Our action, deliberate action to do what? To finance these companies through the exchanges. What we have done, as you were, the Nigerian exchange has the growth board, which used to be called the Assemble. And the growth board basically is for small and medium-scale enterprises to be able to list there, to be able to raise capital, and of course, have access to finance from every part of Africa. So that was critical and important. So we encouraged it. As the SEC, we approved it. And of course, we are, advocates of that. But beyond all of that, what has also happened, like I said, is about being intentional. And being intentional means you need to do certain things that ordinarily wouldn't have happened, right? Within the last 1 year, we have also created what we call the Office of Small Business and, Small Business Advocacy and Capital Formation, particularly for small business enterprises to be able to raise capital. Teach them how to raise capital. For whatever you think, most of these businesses don't even know they can actually access the exchanges or they can access the capital market in raising capital. So the first important thing to do is to educate them, bring them on board, get them to understand exactly the processes that they need to take in order to be able to raise capital. One of the greatest challenges that these companies do have always is the structure. A lack of structure, lack of governance, right? Lack of transparency, and lack of understanding of exactly of the dynamics of raising capital. So it is important that as the SEC, we are able to provide that platform for that to happen, teaching them exactly how to fish rather than giving them fishes to eat. That is exactly what we have been doing. But beyond that also, in consonance with the global trend in raising capital, we have what we call the crowdfunding rules. The crowdfunding rules are rules that are specific to small and medium-scale enterprises to be able to raise capital. And by so doing, they are able to raise small capital, medium capital that will help their business. And also relaxing the regulations as it affects very big businesses that raise capital from the general public. So clearly for us in Nigeria, one of the things we will do and always do is about intentionality in making sure that these small and medium-scale enterprises have the access to regulation, has the access to education, has the access to funders, and has the access to basic advice, business advice, that will help them condition themselves to become the bride that investors are looking for. You must have it that there is money in Africa. The only thing that is not available is getting them to know that there is money. And once we do that, I'm sure we're going to win the case. Thank you.
And you're right. Thank you, Dr. AGAMA, for highlighting how Nigeria's approach is overcoming financial inclusion, because this is financial inclusion challenges, and strengthening intra-African trade through the AELP. Let's come to my last question. I'm sorry, we're running out of time, but I will ask Mr. Mike OGBALU, could you share what projects are being considered to accelerate the adoption of these technologies like blockchains, like artificial intelligence, and improve cross-border trading across Africa?
Thank you very much. And you touched on two technologies that I consider, inevitable, for the future. Blockchains, by their very nature, distributed ledger technology. Data itself is immutable, it's difficult to hack. So from a security point of view, blockchains are excellent. Also on blockchains, you're able to implement smart contracts, such as which you can use to tie transactions to payments. AI is also very critical for the future. There's so much data, being made available now more than any time in human history. And you find that you can actually use AI to actually mine and gain intelligence from data. In fact, with AI, you can actually begin to have models that predict the next market collapse and things like that. Now, for us at PAPSS, we don't just talk about the technologies, we utilize both technologies. So from the AI standpoint, for example, our AML system is AI-driven, and it's able to detect trends which ordinary analysis would normally not be able to throw up. We also use AI from our customer service point of view. So if you go today to our website, you would see a chatbot that is able to actually take you through a journey and tell you about PAPSS, and it's AI-driven. So AI can do so much, and it's able to mine data. And also from fraud detection and analysis, it's able to pick up trends in ways that we before were not able to. Now, that we also have in place. But speaking about blockchains, and this for me is very, very important, we have built a new system that we call the African Currency Marketplace. It's a system that allows businesses, corporates across Africa to actually come in, because the biggest challenge we have is that funds are sterilized across Africa. You have a large airline selling tickets in one country, and is not able to repatriate its proceeds. And you have that across many countries in Africa. Then you have investors who have invested, their hard-earned monies in one country, and when they make revenues, they are not able to externalize those revenues. So we've built this system, and we built it on the blockchain, because the blockchain is immutable. It guarantees certain levels of security that you can't get on traditional systems. So these businesses are able to log in and say, I have Naira, and this is how much I'm willing to let go of my Naira for. And then the other person logs in and says, I have beer. This is how much I'm able to let. So what we are doing now is trying to crowd in a lot of corporates, and by so doing, you find that people are able to do more businesses in their local currencies, and in such a way that we don't have this capital sterilized in one bucket or the other. We have, just to close, one of the large corporates that we're working with says to us that we've invested billions on the African continent. But the challenge we have is that we make money in one country, and we are not able to use it to fund projects in another country. And we keep going back to our home country to beg for further investments. So we are now using this system that we call the Africa Currency Marketplace to actually solve these problems across the continent. So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mike OGBALU, for your detailed explanation of how blockchain and AI can revolutionize trading and settlement across Africa, and especially with these new products, as well as the key innovation driven by PAPSS. I was supposed to ask you a last question, but we are running out of time. I'm sorry. Please think about it. Please just think about it and write me an email. For all you panelists, what would you consider your strategic priority to ensure the success of the AELP or the success of the BRVM in 2030? All of you think about it, because we don't have time to make it, and I have another panelist to welcome on stage. But I really warmly thank you for sharing your insight. And please, everybody in the room, give a round of applause to all my speakers. We may have time to ask questions after my fireside chat with the president of the capital market from Morocco. But before, I will introduce her perfectly. Thank you for sharing your insights, and I'll let you get back to your seat. So let's take, well, I want to take a picture. I'm sorry. Can we take a picture with Mrs. President after the chat? Okay, yeah, come back. Merci. You stay? Okay. They want to stay and to take the picture, so let's go. I'm coming too, huh? Ok, mesdames et messieurs, je vais me faire gronder parce que je vais prendre un peu de temps pour la suite.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have about 10 minutes of delay, but the next session is going to be quite interesting. It's going to be about financial market, and if it is happening today, it's thanks to its institution and the Casablanca Stock Exchange at the IMMC. I would like to thank very much these financial institutions for being here with us. And if it's happening, then it's thanks to these three organizations. Mrs. Zahia, who is the director of the capital market here in Morocco, it plays an important role in the transformation of financial markets in the continent. Under her leadership, Morocco has been able to cross a major milestone in a visionary project which opens up the doors for better liquidity and capital flow in the market. In terms of regulations and risk mitigation, this is becoming a precious source for an interconnected African market, especially in the IMP aspect. I would like to ask Mrs. the Chairman to come and join me here to share with us your vision and your perspective to complete this panel. Let's welcome Mrs. Lezariet, and my apologies for the next panelist. We need to first finish this first discussion and then move on to the next. Mrs. Nezha, I do not want to put more pressure on you, but we have about 10 minutes and we are very much short of time. So let's start. I'm really glad to conduct this interview with you in the context where the financial market in Africa remains very restricted. The different initiatives such as PNV and others play an important role in the integration from an economic standpoint and the financial standpoint here in the continent. What's the strategic role, or what strategic role can a regulator play in providing support to this project, especially in terms of regional coordination, regulatory harmonization, and also building trust with investors? Thank you. I'm taking some notes. Of course, it's always difficult for me to remember them, but it's better. First of all, I want to start by congratulating this initiative, which has about 2 years. It's one of the first initiatives in Africa. It's a platform that interconnects and brings together different stock markets of the African market, which represents 90% of the capital market here in Africa. It's quite important because this shows the willingness of different African investors, African companies, different experts from financial markets and capital markets to work together. So there is a real willingness to work together and collaborate. There's a lot of pragmatism instead of waiting for one day to happen or for 2030 as a horizon to have, of course, a unified stock market. It's good at the beginning to start by having a pragmatic approach, and this platform is the proof for it. It's also an initiative that shows the capacity to innovate. This is important, and we are trying to monitor the usage of this platform very closely. The role of the regulator, I think you know very well our classical role, which is to make sure that there is a good efficiency in the market, to also protect different financial instruments, to watch for equity in the market as well. But all of this has to happen in order to be done within the market, the capital market. And this, of course, was the first vision of the Moroccan market during its transformation in 2016. The Moroccan market said that the authority of the markets and the capital market will allow to supervise it, but what capital market do we want for our country, Morocco? It's a market that has to answer different expectations of investors. It's also a market that can mobilize savings and then a number of other instruments, and which will serve at the end to provide more funding to the economy and to different companies, but also for SMEs or small and medium enterprises, as was mentioned before. So it's important to have this vision to say that we are helping to construct and put in place a capital market with good rules and regulations, with the best international standards. So it's not about mobilizing companies here locally, but it's also about attracting foreign investors. We only know the international standards, and it's within this framework that we are operating, which means that we need to first and foremost be good listeners and listen carefully to the whole ecosystem in order to be able to explain this further and to explain our different priorities, whether we are talking about legislative or regulatory priorities to accompany this improvement of the capital markets. And this is why among the priorities that we have, the implementation of an alternative market for small and medium enterprises in Casablanca Stock Exchange. Among the priorities, we had the amendments in the law about capital investments and OPCCs, as well as the preparation of the development of Mohammed VI funding, which aims to invest in good sectors, and it's also within the framework, and this is something that comes within the platform, which is to make sure that in every law, in every regulation, and that regulates either our markets or financial instruments, a place for the international dimension. I will give you a few examples. For instance, today, a company that has a headquarters not in Morocco can come this side to the Casablancan Stock Exchange, and normally for the law the law that's coming up for market funds shares that are coming here to Morocco. Even for the upcoming market, it's also part of the priorities that is aiming to have different types of instruments which have as a priority to attract different investors mostly foreign investors, and here we are referring to international investors, but also investors from the African continent as well. You have done a very good transition, Mrs. the President, because this market was launched on the 12th November 2024. It's recent. I would like to know, what is your experience and how can it encourage other African countries to modernize their financial infrastructure? Could you please give us an insight about your retrospective experience in the implementation of this new market? I'm not going to take a look at this. I know very well I have only 1 minute left. Let's take 3 more minutes if you can allow us to do so. We will try to talk quickly about our experience. Our experience was that since a while now we wanted to be part of the market, but at a point of time we said we needed a market that will exactly abide by the international standards, and that will allow us to, that we can put in place progressively, which means that regulations and the legislation has to predict for all types of laws, and that's how we have done it in the Casablanca Stock Exchange, with an infrastructure with international standards and with governance standards as well. The finance word is a bunch of processes, systems, and also experts. And I think that the experience that we have accumulated so far, wherein our ecosystem is actually around this, and which means that the first operations or transactions are going to happen next semester. Now we are calling for different stakeholders for this. We were really eager to bring the right capacity building programs to the whole ecosystem. So we have provided our help and support to them throughout a period of 18 months. First of all, it's interesting to them, and we wanted to also make sure that they have the same level of information and understanding. And it was just the beginning. We were so much ambitious about this that we said to ourselves, we need to go to the regulator, and we need to see the most important markets, say SafeTC, which is our American partner, and who wanted to help the Moroccan capital market system in capacity building. So I just wanted to share with you in a few words our experience. And of course, we have also, we are always extremely committed with each other. For instance, with the IOSCO or the MEHREZ, which is the Northern Africa and the Middle Eastern Committee. We are all committed to exchange with you about our expertise, and we will not hesitate if an African market wishes for that. I would like to remind you that we are the only second market after the African market. We are not. We will be very glad to share our experience with you, and we have done it already in many other subjects, such as sustainable funding, and it's also our job to go and look for experts from other places. So this is the continental sharing of experience that we are looking forward to attain, and we're looking forward as well for the presence of different directors from different stock exchanges around the African market. We have touched upon a continental initiative that was launched in 2016 during the COP22 of Marrakesh. Marrakesh Pledge engages us all together to work on putting in place sustainable financial instruments and implementing them together. It's an approach which is ongoing. We will finish on this particular word or particular sentence about sharing experiences. Thank you very much for bringing clear insight and clear answers about our questions. My apologies for the upcoming panelists. Mrs. the President, it was a real honor to have you. Thank you very much.
Nous faisons notre petite photo et je libère la scène.